this whole thing started with this idea that I had that the problem in our world is that we don't value housework. And what I mean by that is there's been a division between work and housework. And work is what you do that you get paid for, and housework you don't get paid for. And that, you know, that has been typically women's thing. And of course, therefore, it has had no value and hasn't gotten paid for. And what that is really about is that housework is the job of regenerating us so that we can go back to work or do whatever it is we need to do the next day, and of raising the next generation of workers. And if we don't regenerate ourselves every day, and regenerate is a kind of a big word, but what it means is we have to be able to function every day. So we need sleep, we need food, we need our lunches packed, we need clean clothes and all of that stuff. All that housework stuff, right? And every single society, every species devotes itself to regenerating, like the plant has to get the water, the sunshine, and all of that stuff, and the animals have to eat, and the raising of the next generation. Everybody does that. That's what they do. But see, we humans are so smart and so sophisticated that we can't do that. That's not what we do. We devote ourselves to making money and to creating profit. And that is the problem. And you see how it starts with the work of regenerating and reproduction has been given to women and therefore has no value and has never been paid. And in those, you know, there was a time when the rest of it was in the hands of men and they gave themselves a lot of value. Well, this is way more than an issue between male and female because it's really about humanity in itself and what we're doing on this planet. So that was the original idea. And so then we started talking about fighting for a world that actually meets the needs of people and the earth, because we do the same thing to the earth that we do to us. We don't regenerate, we don't take care of our health, we don't take care of our mental health. We have been eating, you know, food with toxins. We've been polluting the earth and all of that stuff of regeneration. We haven't focused on that. And so it's both people and the earth. So out of that sort of sprung this idea that that's what we need to be doing. We need to be looking at everything from the perspective of, are we actually regenerating ourselves and the earth? And if not, why not? And obviously the mindless pursuit of money and profit has gotten us all kind of mixed up. So then after that, last time we had a meeting and we talked about how bad things had gotten and why it's so urgent that we take this on. And part of it is you can see the horrible division among people. It's because people aren't getting their needs met and they're all angry and they're blaming each other. You know, and we have the king of division as president. And he's figured this out. Nobody is getting their needs met. So let's turn all these nobodies against each other and then they won't notice that some of us are taking everything and leaving nothing for anyone else. And then the sad thing is, too, that even those people who are getting the money or wealthy, they're not regenerating themselves either. They're sick. Everybody is stressed. We live in a crazy society where we don't have the values that really will promote us taking care of ourselves, each other, and the earth. So really nobody's happy. And so last time I drove people away in large numbers because I said, let's look at the realities of what we have done to the earth. And we are, you know, like at the last minute, this is lack of regeneration. We think we can just take, and never let the earth rest and never give back and not clean it up. I mean, what is, you know, that movement is about housework. It's about cleaning up the rivers and cleaning up the, you know, to me, it's so obvious. And so I was really pushing this, that this is really urgent and that we are an emotional wrecks also. We don't regenerate. We, instead of taking care of ourselves, we use drugs, we drink, we have sex, we gamble, we, you know, are food addicts.
Veg on TV.
We're doing all of this stuff to try to make ourselves keep going instead of healing ourselves and being well, and then out of that place, keep going. And today, Linda, the message that you're going to be missing is where we are going, what the world could look like if we actually took care of ourselves and the earth. Yes, Erica? I don't hear you. There's no, I can't hear you. Erica, you're on mute.
It's fine. She was just asking me if I was recording, so we're good.
Oh, okay. So today's meeting is about, okay, we know there's a problem. We have a sense of what the problem is and what that we need to start fighting for the regeneration and reproduction of humanity and the earth so that we can reach the level of every microbe, of what every insect knows how to do, right? In our infinite wisdom here. And we realize how urgent it is. And now, so what are we really talking about? You know, it's very easy to say, yes, we're all about meeting the needs of humanity and the earth. And then we said, okay, so what does that really look like? What are we talking about? Let's get specific. Because, you know, don't you love these movements that have all these like glorious sounded phrases, and yet there's no meat behind it. It's just a lot of hot air. Well, we don't want to be full of hot air. We want to be clear. We want to think clearly and carefully. And so we started to think about this. The assignment to people in our organization, because some of the people here are in our organization and some aren't, was to think about various areas and take a look at what it would look like if we actually started from what are our needs and how do we meet them. And so some people said, okay, I'd like to talk about education, healthcare, artificial intelligence, mental health. I don't remember off the top of my head what other topics people took on and said, okay, let's insurance, communications. Well, I already did that. Communications like PR. We have not organized our societies around meeting human needs or the needs of the earth. What could we do differently? And what people found in this past week as they were trying to prepare for making a share, and we're not asking anyone to have a platform that we're going to run on for president. You know, we're just in the beginning of this thinking process of, you know, what would our solutions look like? And people found that they were kind of struggling because we were so in the box that if we said, okay, I want you to think about healthcare, it would be about, well, how do I reorganize this clinic or that hospital or that system, rather than saying our need is for health. What is going to help humanity become healthy? And you know, does that have to do with food? Does that have to do with where do children learn how to eat properly? Where are kids going to learn exercise? You know, what structures could we use for the delivery of healthcare and so on? And I'm just using health because Lynn was talking about how maybe she had taken the wrong approach, and I really don't know. But people were sort of stuck. We are so siloed. You know that famous word that we're using today, that everybody's in a silo, like, okay, this is my PR, this is my insurance, this is my school, this is what education looks like today. And instead of starting with our needs, what do we need? What do we need education for anyway? And what should we be educating our children? It's like, oh, maybe we should change the classroom like this. And I'm not saying that our people did that, but that's what I mean. It's like we're still stuck in boxes in the way that we think. And so I think it's just been a glorious experience of people really hitting their heads against their own box and realizing how far we are from even being able to think about these questions in a creative way. It's like, what do we really need as a world? And, you know, we believe that the purpose of the economy is to provide those goods and services that we need in order to regenerate and reproduce. Whereas the world as it is, we think the economy's purpose is to make money and to create profit. And Anne, who's the San Diegan visiting in Phoenix, she put an incredible article on that I saw this morning, that we have a community communications thing called Slack. And it was an incredible article about how our hunting-gathering forefathers knew more than we did, and how that was working. And they talked about certain kinds of agriculture, that the production of grain allowed people to get taxed, and that was the beginning of, they talked about the state, but we're really talking about exploitation, you know, of how am I going to take away from, how can I count what you have so I can take a portion of it and just leave enough so that you can just go back and work tomorrow, which is what the economy looks like. You know, how can I pay you enough money so that you can come back to work tomorrow? And in that article, it quoted, and those of you who don't know me do not know that I have the memory of like a 125-year-old on a good day. And so I don't remember anything, but there was a quote from, I think it was John Maynard Keynes, who is like, you know, one of the gurus of, we think of the gurus of you know, capitalist economics, but actually he's not. And what was fantastic about that quote is he was talking about the sickness of our focus on money. And he was saying, you know, the whole purpose of, now I'm making up probably what he said, but this was the idea, and please don't quote me because I don't remember exactly what he said, but this was the idea of it, is that that our technology is bringing us to a place that we can actually have some time to live and to think and to do other things. But no, we're so focused on money and profit. And, you know, everybody somehow, one way or the other, comes down to what the problem is. That the problem is that we focus on money and profit and we're not focusing on needs. And this whole conversation about healthcare, Obamacare, a single payer is always about money. You know, I almost never hear people talking about you cannot have a working class if you have no health care. You know, what are you going to do? Kill your, you know, and I talked about this in the first talk about when I was really describing this, slavery. You know, slavery was when you could just import people. You didn't even have to bother giving people food or decent conditions so that they could reproduce, because you could just throw them away and it was cheaper to import somebody else. And see, that is not so different today, because what the you know, international capitalists do is they just go from country to country destroying the environment and leaving behind the pollution and the sickness, and go to someplace else cheaper where they can pick up some more workers that they don't have to care for. You know, and this system is so sick. It is so sick, and it is so bad for everybody, because even the people who are working for these giant corporations, they feel caught in that need to produce profit. Then it's not even necessarily what they would want to do. And really, who owns these companies? Who's responsible for this attitude? It's like everybody points to everybody. Oh, yeah, well, you see, if you're in middle management, it's upper management. And upper management, it's the board of directors. And the board of directors can blame the shareholders. And who are the shareholders? And by the time you get done with it, nobody is driving the train. The train is driving itself. It's on a track, and it's going to hell in a handbasket. So I am not surprised that people had some difficulty in envisioning a world where we meet our needs, because it's not in our paradigm. We don't even know how to start to ask the question. And then what I was sharing earlier is that if you think that's depressing, you want to hear what I have to say, is that something really shocked me this week about myself, which was that I was listening to Stephen Bannon, which I normally would never do, but I heard one thing from him when he was talking about the election of Roy Moore to the Alabama Senate Republican race, and you know, that he won the primary. This is a guy who believes in putting Christianity before the Constitution. You know, he's got a perspective, right? And Trump was doing the other guy. I mean, you know, the whole thing about Trump this, Trump that, Trump that. Why aren't we talking about what I'm talking about? Why are we wasting all of our time about how much Trump is tweeting? Not that I don't understand that we're all in trouble when a lot of progress is undone, but we have much bigger fish to fry, which is the whole way that our world was operating, because before Trump was president, we were still operating the same way. You know, we can't blame him for this. So what Stephen Bannon was saying to the crowd that he was revving up to vote for Roy Moore, as he said, they don't want to hear what you have to say. And I thought, you're so right. I don't want to hear what those people have to say. I don't want to hear people who think blacks are not equal. I don't want to hear people who think that women shouldn't drive because it's going to destroy our ovaries, like some of the Saudi clerics, now that the Saudi government is saying women should be given the right to drive next June. But, you know, I don't want to hear those people. I don't want to hear the people who are white nationalists, anti-Semitic. You know, there are so many people whose opinions I don't want to hear. And I realized, you know, as I looked at this, I said, well, you know, they don't want to hear what I have to say. They were brought up in a world where, you know, Hollywood did tend to have a liberal, you know, cast, right? And they didn't like that because it wasn't Christian enough. So from their perspective, the whole world was upside down. And all the things that they cherished and believed in were being trampled on when women were granted the right to have abortions. And by the way, I also read this week that 1 out of 2 abortions in the world today is illegal. And you know what that means in terms of health. Talk about healthcare, right? But anyway, these people they were angry. And they don't want to hear black athletes. They just want to see them fighting it out in the football stadium to give them some entertainment. And I don't want to hear them. So how are we all going to get together and unite around our needs? And I see that it's really always about our opinions. You know, my opinion, your opinion, his opinion. And so when we start talking about, you know, education, when Tracy and I were talking about, well, what are you going to say about education? Well, what are we going to teach children? Well, whose values are they going to be? Well, the right values, which are ours, right? Whatever mine is. I don't even know that you share my values or that I share your values. But let's say we even do. So, you know, when the world is going in our direction, everything is right with the world and we're making progress. But when somebody comes in with a contrary perspective, and nothing is right with the world. I mean, people who thought everything went south when Barack Obama was elected president. You know, I'm appalled. But see, I'm appalled when, you know, Donald Trump is elected president, and they were appalled when Barack Obama was. So how do we get beyond opinions and start uniting around this question? And see, it brings me back to, we need to start talking about our needs, because I think if we could take anybody and put them in the same room, if they start spouting off, well, my need is for blacks to get into their place, you know, I say, well, is that really what you need? You know, maybe some people will just go off on some kind of rant, just like I could rant against white nationalists. They could rant against you know, black people or Muslims. But if we could only get down below the surface of that conversation and say, well, what is the problem? What are your needs that are not getting met? Maybe we would all discover that we need the same thing. But when it comes down to actually meeting those needs, we start running into some roadblocks, because then we get into opinions. So, you know, I would like to say, okay, well, we're trying to build a movement here. So I'm going to give you the 30-minute speech to rally everybody and get you completely convinced. But instead of doing that, I'm coming here to throw a monkey wrench into our entire event to say, okay, now let's start getting real. And what does that really mean? And how do we get past opinions? And how do people really start to identify their needs? And how are we going to start talking about meeting them without bumping into 1,001 opinions? And I know that there was a time when our world was more egalitarian than it is now, but that was probably thousands of years ago. You know, we have structured over thousands of years. It's not just capitalism. Do we still have the people on in San Diego? Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, we're here.
Okay. It's not just capitalism. I mean, in feudalism, you had serfs. Before that, you know, in many societies, you had slaves. You know, the pharaohs in Egypt, this way of looking at people and the earth as something to exploit rather than as that we are in this together and we all need to be taken care of goes back thousands of years. And it's always about one group of people trying to get their needs met at the expense of others without realizing that when we don't all get our needs met, you're cruising for a bruising. You know, people who are not well taken care of are not good workers. You know, if you put lead in the water of children, they're not going to grow up to be rocket scientists. You know, people who are sick, distressed, working 3 jobs are not going to function. So we are in this thing together, but how are we going to break through to the real conversation? And can we stay honest with ourselves? Be careful that we're not just spouting opinions. Even though I think I'm right. And how are we going to reach people? So that's what we're here to talk about today. And some of you are brand new and haven't bought into this conversation yet, and I hope that you do. But some of us have been thinking about this and would like to share some preliminary thoughts that we've had. And we want to start a conversation here today. Usually I speak for an hour and a half, isn't it? And I don't want to do that today. So before we start the conversation, let's continue introducing people. And so we'll go back to San Diego. And then we'll go continue on the screen. Come in, San Diego.
We are here. Someone's coming to the camera.
Okay.
Great. Just look, well, sorry. You're probably in the right place. Hang on. Let me just look. Yeah, that's good.
I'm Roz in San Diego. Was there a question that we were answering, or what is it now?
Yeah, how are you feeling today? But just to introduce yourself and how are you feeling today, but that may have changed.
Yeah. So how am I feeling? Well, I've been struggling with this conversation from the get-go. And I'm not totally clear on what the struggle is, but because I hear everything that you're saying, and there's nothing that I don't agree with. I think maybe I'm the representation of that part of society that is disillusioned and really questioning, really what the hell difference is this going to make?
Well, I couldn't hear the last thing you said. What the hell
difference is this going to make?
Okay. You mean our efforts?
Yeah, or these conversations, we've been talking about this for, I don't know, we've been talking about this probably as long as I've met you in some iteration or other. And I'm very clear, even for me, I have to hear it at different, how many times you have to hear something before it sinks in. But there's still something though that's that has me question, and I don't even know fully what I'm questioning. So even this morning as I'm sitting here, and it's funny, when I walked in here today, I don't know, I kind of felt like the fool from the tarot card, who's kind of at the beginning of something, but just kind of, I don't know that cynical was it, but it's just kind of, it's like, okay, so this is what we're dealing with right now. All right, let's deal with it. That was how I was feeling when I walked in here. After you've been speaking, there is one conversation that came up for me, and it's about, and we talked about this when we were in our clearing, about being in the oneness. And I beginning to suspect that there's some part of me that maybe that I can't grasp this conversation in a way that I'm motivated to do something, because there is some fear of being in the oneness. Mm. And that's about the most that I've done. So while I still feel a little bit like the fool when I walked in today, there's also something else that's brewing, and I can't put my finger on it.
Great. Sounds good. Okay. Who else? Yes.
Hi, just have a quick request, Erica, before you start. We can hear you better if you're closer to the screen, but if you can move the camera up a little bit so we can
All
see.
right. Come on closer. That's right.
Wonderful to be able to
I'll guide you. Just come a little closer. There you go.
Come a little bit closer. Oh, hi there. We see another youthful face on the screen. Hello.
Okay.
Take care of it while I cook breakfast.
All right, she's going to cook breakfast.
Okay, so Erica is going to introduce herself from San Diego, and then would you like to introduce yourself after Erica, and then we'll go back on the rest of the screen.
Sure.
Okay, Erica.
I'm Erica from San Diego. I also felt my resistance to coming here, and while you were talking, I realized that's not
Could you
I'm going to mute her.
oh, Kelly? Okay. Oh, Todd will do it. Okay, because we heard a child instead of Erica. We could tell the difference, actually. All right, Erica, take it away.
Okay, so I also felt my resistance to attending in person this week, and I realized as I was listening that it's not my resistance, it's just in the collective. And I'm glad I just walked through it and got here because I really feel the oneness with the conversation. I am on board. I don't have the solutions. I just want to be part of them. So I don't think I have a lot to detail besides that.
That's good. I like it.
I don't want to be part of the mass distraction either, and I think I can support that.
I like it. I like it. Thank you. So I think that was everybody in San Diego. So the other person on Kelly's screen, you were about to introduce yourself and, okay.
Hi, I'm Isabella Stella, Serendipity Moon, Dillon Way, Ruderbennett. I'm the daughter of Kelly.
Hello.
Hello.
And we're happy to have you. You look like her daughter.
Thanks.
Yeah.
One of many.
Beautiful face. Thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Okay, so now, according to my screen, the next person who hasn't introduced himself, no, we did Joseph, right? We did Christine. We have 505-4312, and that is?
Chris Reese.
Okay, Chris, can we hear you? Are you there? Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm very happy to be here. I started the day feeling sick and overwhelmed, and I am a corporate slave, so slaving away tomorrow, flying away on a business trip. So I felt really ill, like physically ill, and just physically ill. And then after we heard Beth's music, and then I started hearing Beth's voice, and you were very cheerful and engaging while the rest of us were crazy. I started to calm down. and I feel sort of like what Roz described, like I've gone through different kind of awarenesses of what's blocking me. I may represent that fear of, I think a person who thinks that they've somehow worked the system to their advantage, capitalism to their advantage, might lose the advantages that they haven't been able to work. So, but it's not going to stop me. I feel happy. I love what we do. I love our inner rift people, and I really welcome people who are joining us today. If it feels daunting or overwhelming, you're not alone. We all feel that way too frequently, but we hang in there because, at least for me, ultimately, it's helping me be the person I want to be.
Oh, that's very nice. And so then there's John. We know that because he said it was John from 479. So, John, would you like to introduce yourself? Okay, can we here?
Unmute.
Okay, he needs to be, there we go. All right, John, speak to us. It keeps getting muted and unmuted. Okay, you're unmuted.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Beth.
Hi.
I'm glad.
I haven't seen John in what, 20 minutes or something?
I'm faithless, and perhaps I have a belief that being faithless allows for whatever it is that I'm looking at to have a place to be recognized. And so I'm really, really excited about the thought of what this collective imagination could have an effect on this world, this insanity that I seem to be here. But I'm right now I'm very interested in this belief that I am somehow separate, and the world out there is the objects of this separateness, and as long as that duality remains, we're screwed.
Right.
And but how to have that be our experience of oneness, that's what interests me. And really glad to be here, and so glad to hear some familiar voices.
And John is calling from?
I'm from Northwest Arkansas. A beautiful day here.
That's lovely.
Very glad to be here.
Very glad to have you. And you know that Rosie is from Arkansas.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What part?
Roz? Roz, you've been asked a question. I don't know if, yeah. Not that we want to get too much into trivia. But
Nashville and
Yeah.
Ozark in the southern part of the state for all my family.
Okay.
all right.
Wonderful.
Who would have thought that out of this handful of people, 2 would be from Arkansas? Now, on the other hand, is there anyone else here from Brooklyn originally? What? Anna, you were born in Brooklyn? You were born in Brooklyn? Oh my God, it's destiny. We're taking over. The Jews and the Indians, we're taking over. You see, it's true. What the white nationalists are fearing. They're losing their grip. Huh?
I'm from Brooklyn also.
And that's right, and Aria's, oh my God, we are just like, we're taking, oh my God, you're from Brooklyn too? Oh, is that it? Who, no, of course I forgot her name already.
I was born about a mile from where you were raised and born.
Oh my God. And you're from Irene's friend, whose name is? Jean. Jean is from Brooklyn. Oh my God, I did not know. Well, we are either doomed or destined. Okay, all right. So now, does everybody feel like they're ready for the next step, which is for people to come forward and start sharing some ideas? You've gotten this context now. I hope that I've laid out a context so people can really understand what this conversation is about. And I also hope that those of us who are like dedicated to these ideas and principles and have been dragging ourselves to these meetings for 30 years, that we don't feel discouraged that we don't have a huge turnout, because we are just in the beginning of thinking and revisioning and connecting and getting self-honest. You know, the fastest way to get followers is to lie. Right? Tell people what they want to hear and they'll go anywhere. We're not going to do it.
Good.
Let's not be discouraged. Let's be happy that we're having the conversation and that we are actually attracting people who are listening and participating in some way. And we don't know where it's growing. And Rosie, I wake up every day with 2 thoughts. One is I should give up and take care of myself and go to, or take a long nap for the next, because I'm 72 and extremely ill. And it's like a struggle just to get out of bed, right? And then I think, what's the point? What is the point, right? All I'm doing is spending money on things that, are never going to have any. And then there's another part of me that says, what? You can't do that. What's the point of living if you don't do something? And I know we're right. I know that that's an opinion, and I'm willing to stand behind that opinion. We are right. People are not getting the care, the love, the food, the air, the stimulation, the work, the rest, the connection with nature, the clean. I mean, we are not getting our needs met. That is so obvious. I don't care if you're a high top executive, you know, snorting cocaine, or you're the janitor, or you're unemployed, or you're disabled, or whatever it is. You know, we are not getting our real needs met. Nobody is, or our society wouldn't be such a mess. You know, all you have to do is read watch movies or read the biographies of our rock stars. If you want to see a sorry lot of people who have been destroyed by their lives of privilege do not make us well. And yet that's what we are fighting for, privilege over others. There's nothing that is ever going to dissuade me from this belief, because it's not based on opinions, it's based on observation. It's based on my heart, feeling the heart of other people. So who's ready to stand up and make a fool of themselves next? It looks like Christine is ready to go.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm close enough. So I work in the field of public relations, and I happen to work for the PR firm that Rachel Maddow called the PR firm from hell. She said, when the devil needs, you know, PR, the devil calls us. So, so in looking at
executive, you have to know this, that Christine is an executive.
I am an executive in this
high
firm.
position.
Yes, I have power in this firm.
Just in case you think it's all about, you know, us versus them, like executives versus the laborers.
I am the them.
She's the them.
I'm the them. Here I am. And so the first, like, I didn't like this question at first, because my first thought was like, well, maybe there would be no public relations in this new world, right? But not in the way that is the worst of public relations, right? And I think Beth said it well once, is like, the worst of public relations is you lie enough to get people to buy your product. So that field doesn't really exist in this new world that we're talking about. So in that sense, there would be no need. So once I got over that and freaking out that, oh my God, this awesome new world is coming in which my needs would be met, but no, I wouldn't have my job.
No, that is so perfect, isn't it?
It is.
It just shows you how crazy we are.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, your needs would all be met, but you need a job.
But that is so stressful, right? This insanely stressful job, right? But I wouldn't have it. Oh my God, I would just be happy with other happy people and have my needs met. Like, oh, you know, so after I got over that, I thought, well, there could be a communications purpose in the world. Since there are like 7 billion of us, so it's not like we can just be necessarily word of mouth all the time, just like tell your neighbor, because it might take a while for good information like this program, you know, that we're in today, to be available to people. Or let's say you needed a new whatever you needed,
washing machine.
A new washing machine, exactly. You know, it would be good to know that there's one that's like 70% more energy efficient or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So then, so it's interesting that you called the field communications when you first brought it up. Now, our founder has always said that what we do is not just communications. And that's why it's called public relations, because he was famous for what's called crisis communications. Like when the Tylenol thing happened back in the day.
Does everybody know what the Tylenol thing is?
Yeah, you guys might be too young, but I know I'm one of the youngest. But basically they were tampered with, and that's why you now have all those annoying things on all, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He said the hardest thing, and I've experienced this now that I've done some crisis comms, it's not the communications, it's convincing people or supporting people who are responsible for things going wrong to own it and to communicate it and to let people know so that it doesn't impact more people. And he is right. It is hard because when people feel that they've done something wrong and they're responsible for it, they want to hide it. So in that, but it still fits into communications because you're still supporting people to communicate. And in this case, you're communicating something to the public that is a danger to them and that could unnecessarily harm people. Here's the thing, you talked about opinions. So this is what came to me. You know, we have all these different opinions, right? And I was also thinking about the relationship between reporters and PR people and reporters and companies, because it's a naturally adversarial relationship. Like we train people, it's called media training. Like we drill them, we prepare them for the onslaught of the reporters, and reporters are clever and tricky. And sometimes they're not bad people, you know what I mean? But it's almost like trained for that. But what if like in this world where we're not kind of competing or like having to like sell something, and this is what I've noticed when I've been talking to people about this topic, I feel like PR would go more from selling to informing. Reporters could still challenge things, you know, like there could be this dialogue. So that relationship could still be there, but it would be like a dialogue and challenging ideas and really kind of like thinking through it with the intention of, you know, what's in the highest good of everybody. So let me see if there was anything else. Oh, the one other thing to respond to kind of Roz's thing is like, what good will any of this do, right? But just being asked to think about this topic has had me talk to people a lot differently about everything. So I was invited to represent kind of this new culture thing we're doing at our work and to present it to our San Francisco office. And their response is like, that's great. We have a new culture. We're still working like crazy hours, right? And so I talked about the system of capitalism and how the system is created. And I invited them to give their feedback and that it would go to the CEO and to do it via video. And they had good suggestions too. I said, you know, we can try and do our best to create the best culture within the system, but this is the system that we're in. And there was one, and I was so proud of her, I managed her, who looked straight into the camera and she said, I want to know that my value to you is not a number.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was sharing about this with, you know, our middle school president and asking, you know, what would education or administration look like, you know, in this new world. And I was talking to Luke's writing instructor, and she was saying, you know, it sounds more like that ability to have long-term thinking just versus the short term. And she talked about the conversations that are happening in the horse breeding world, right? You know, like it affects everything. And I think that like, so that's communication, like that's part of my job, you know, but to support everyone to have conversations like that, that could be a role of communications and to kind of facilitate this whole dialogue.
Thank you. That was great. There were three things that you said that really triggered me to, you know, to make a comment.
Mm-hmm.
One is when you were talking about the Tylenol thing and trying, part of PR is to try to get the company to acknowledge accountability. You know, that I just want to say that something that's very obvious, but I'll say it anyway, which is it starts at home when you're a bad boy and you get punished. or you're a bad girl and you get punished. I mean, how are we going to change PR and company presidents when they are carrying around within them a child that was shamed and is afraid to acknowledge accountability or was punished, shamed or punished? And then, of course, if you acknowledge accountability and something is bad, you're going to get fired. I mean, you don't see people saying, gee, have you learned anything from this? Can we do something different? Should we keep you because you learned? Or, no, why don't we bring some other inexperienced person in here who's just as bad as you are, but nobody knows? So that is really striking how, Helen, did you want to make a comment in this comment before I go and comment on the rest?
Yes.
Okay.
Hang on. Yeah, go ahead.
I was sitting there thinking exactly the same thing. And I just imagine that as we're talking about whether it's business or education or mental health or health, that we're all going to come back down to the same reality, that we have to change the spiritual principles that we're raised with at a very young age in order to change anything.
Yes. If we were to reward people for taking accountability, I don't mean that you get a lollipop, because then you'll want to hit somebody so you can confess to it so you can get the lollipop. You know what I mean? Anything can be distorted. But, if we could meet people's acknowledgments with love and acceptance, I just read that, Anthony Weiner was sentenced to 23 months in prison for I don't know, something with an underage girl or whatever, and it's like, okay, yes, take another sex addict and stick him in jail. That's really going to change something. That's going to change something. That's going to change all those people in their homes who are hiding their sex addiction, who are watching porn on the internet and not wanting anybody to know about it. Yeah, let's just put them in prison. So it's no wonder there isn't that feeling of accountability. The second thing that you talked about, Christine, that I found very striking was the relationship between the reporters and the PR people. Well, and this goes just right to what Helen was talking about. We grow up competitive. We're all trying to prove ourselves. How are the reporters and the PR people not going to battle each other? Because everybody's in their ego trying to prove how valuable they are. So the PR person's value comes from hiding the truth or just giving you just that piece of the truth that you're going to want to hear. Right. Like I was saying, I could have done a PR job for our movement in this meeting and talk about how wonderful we are. But I am not going to do that because I have some principles, right? A few left hanging on. So, you know what I'm saying? So there it is. It's like, okay, so the PR person has to skew the truth in order to make a point, in order to look good, in order to keep their job, or in order to make their company happy, or to get that praise that they're craving. And then the reporter's job is to poke holes in everything and make the other person look like an asshole. And this is all about competition. Competition for praise, competition for love, competition for jobs, competition for money. I mean, how did we ever get a media? When I look at let's say MSN.com or Fox or any of these, typical, where people are watching these news things, it's all about so-and-so slammed so-and-so. Have you noticed that? Every headline is more violent than the one before. That's what seems to titillate our interest, is who slammed who. And what kind of dirt can we get on them? That's not about learning or communicating, and it certainly isn't about meeting our needs. And so as long as we are still, violently competing with one another for whatever crumbs are falling off this damn table, then you're not going to be able to really change that relationship. I mean, my guess is that you won't be able to change the relationship between the reporters and the PR people, because that's what we're trained to be. That's your job, is to either exonerate or to demolish. And which seems to be getting the most juice these days is the demolished. And when people don't even have an argument, all they have to do is call you a name. I mean, all you have to do is look at our Facebook page and you see the comments of some of the people and, you suck, That is really a serious discussion. Okay, and then all of this, of course, is about power. You know that we're all looking for the power, and the power is there because we believe we need the power in order to protect ourselves from all these other non-us's, you know, who are after us. It's like, why are white people still believing that Black people have more privileges? It's just insane. I just read yesterday the latest report that shows that the average white household has 10 times the assets of the average Black household. 10 times. And this is after improvements. And it's the same with Hispanics and so on. So, but yet the fear that we're going to lose some privilege, you know, makes us so willing to dump on the person from below us who might be creeping up to take a piece of our pie. And that's because we don't feel safe in our world, that our needs are going to be met. I mean, God, if our needs were met, we wouldn't have to do that. It's like you were saying about if your needs were met, why would you need that stressful job? So I love the fact that this is already percolating out into other conversations that you're having with other people, because I think that deep down inside, everybody knows that this is true. I really believe that. Even if I'm completely wrong, I really believe that. People know that this is true, that what we're saying is true.
And I just want to make sure Todd tells us about the conversation he had with the high school principal.
All right. All right. So who is it? You next, Todd, or is there someone else who feels called to speak next? Was that helpful? That
was awesome. That was great. Yeah. And I'd like to, this example is so good. I want to bring something up that happened last night, specifically with our son, because he, you know, he plays video games, which are competitive and violent. And we've limited the internet, you know, like we turn it off at a certain time. But we're trying, I mean, it's such a struggle to not go into that thing, like you said, of saying you're wrong, and we really were working with him last night to just say, let's talk about it tomorrow. Right now, we can tell you're not in a good place. You're just wanting to argue, and it's not going to go anywhere. So that was the best we could do at that time. But it's challenging when everything around us is pushing this competitive, you know, thing. You just want to fight for your way, you know. And it's as a parent, it's just really tough to not just go, well, we're the parents and we're telling you no, you know. Which, you know, that's just more of the same. So.
But what is the high school teacher?
Yes, the high school principal, when I first met her, was at something called a Bonsall Sundowner. And I talked with her about what we're doing with the Unleashing the Power of Kids program, because that was back when I met her. And she came up to me the other night at the board meeting, and she said, I want to talk with you about social emotional well-being for our students, and to talk with you and meet with you and Christine to develop a program. You know, they already are offering, they have something called College and Career Day on Thursdays for the high schoolers, but it's not just like preparing them for college, it's preparing them with the social skills, because she's very clear on how many kids go into college, commit suicide, have so many troubles, so much stress related to school performance, and getting into college and actually getting to college and finishing college. You know, like there's so much mental strife and strain and emotional pain that kids go through. You know, she wants to offer a variety of things, because they're doing like salsa dancing, but that's not right for all the kids. So she wants to have a variety of things that they can do, that they're offered, so that the kids feel like they have choices, but they're not limited to just like doing one thing. So that's really
great.
Cool.
So you'll be part of that conversation.
Yes.
That is really, well, see, we may infect a few more people.
Exactly.
I'm very excited by that.
And similar to Christine, I've talked to a lot of people now. All the people that I invited didn't come today, even though I thought I would have 4 or 5 people here. But that's fine, because it started a conversation and they really related. Christine's brother, you know, and our niece, they really are with us in this conversation. And it wasn't like I was trying to convince them. They've been thinking about the same thing. You know, he works at Bed Bath & Beyond, which was like rising company. Now it's kind of on the down thing, and they're not investing in their people. They're pulling back and trying to save every penny. They're kind of on the downslope, partly because of what they're doing to try and be self-protective, I think. Then he sees that. So that's cool too.
And we wouldn't be so self-protective if we felt safe.
Right.
I mean, it's so obvious. Yay. Okay, who feels next? Okay, Tracy.
And Anne too is going to join me.
Oh, she changed her mind, huh?
Changed her mind. She's inspired. Well, and speaking of conversations, I think one of the reasons I was and am excited to be here is because I work in education. I was a school psychologist and I work at the State Department of Ed, and I supervise a number of people who provide training, and I've been trying to rethink what we're doing. Granny's been challenging me, like, really, what's the purpose of your job and what you do, and how does that tie into everything? And I've just been so stuck in that question.
So this is Arizona we're talking about.
Yeah. So I've been excited to maybe open up my own mind and creativity in this. And similar to what Christine said, when I was thinking about what to share today, I also had nothing. Nothing come to me. You know, Granny was asking all these questions about education, like, what's the purpose? You know, should parents attend classes with their kids? You know, does every child need the same curriculum? Should they be taught by age or school level? Should they be working when they're learning? She was just throwing out questions, and it's like my brain has been in a box, and we opened the box and my brain stayed square, you know, like it didn't expand. So fortunately, I was smart enough to ask Granny for some support. And so we had a great conversation yesterday, and Anne was there too, and started talking about what are the needs, you know, what do kids really need? And I could come up with some of those things, like how to think, or, you know, basic skills, values that are not religious based but kind of universal, or history and understanding society. So there were some things I could say, yeah, this is what we need to do. But then when it comes to, okay, well, what do we teach about history, or whose values do we teach? Then we come to the fact that we really have no agreement as a society about what we believe. And Granny gave this great example, like, even if you go to the foundation of our nation, and we have, you know, our Constitution, you know, we believe that all men are created equal. Well, is that even true? You know, it wasn't even true then when they wrote it, you know, like it wasn't carried out, right? So, like, if we don't even have agreement on that, you know, foundation of our nation, like, how are we going to agree what to teach? You know, I was saying, what do I think kids need? Well, personally, my value system is related to what we teach, which is kids need to learn about oneness. You know, kids need to learn how to support each other. You know, we need to create a society where we are accountable and we don't feel shame when we do it, you know, like, but those are my values. You know, how do I come into school and teach those when somebody else's values are that, you know, women are not equal to men, or, you know, blacks are not equal to whites? That's their value. And, like, who gets to say what values we're going to teach? Or history, like, who's writing the history? You know, whose perspective is it? So it, you know, really we came up with a lot more questions than answers, because until we agree, what do we believe? I mean, that then carries over into, well, what do we teach? You know, how are we making those decisions? And I don't know if you had something else you wanted to add, but.
Sure. Well, do you want to respond to what she said first?
No, go ahead. Keep going.
The whole thing.
Sounds like you're next.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when Christine was talking, you know, when she said, what's the purpose of PR? So I started kind of thinking, like, what is the purpose of education? And I'm a public school educator in Fallbrook, California. And, you know, I thought about what I know about the public school system and when it was created and what it was created for, especially like the form that we have it. A lot of the schools we have now were built, you know, in between the 30s and the 50s, and it was, you know, really to create the workers, right? It was to produce workers, and that's why we had the bells, you know, and it was like to really simulate that kind of industrialized environment.
Oh, that's very juicy.
I'm a sociologist as well. I should tell you. So I remember studying that in college, and just that format was created for the worker it was trying to produce at the time, right? But that it hasn't kept up, right, with the needs of modern day. And we were discussing this yesterday as well about, well, what is the needs of the 21st century? You know, with the youth of today, it's so hard to even make a curriculum now because everything's so obsolete in 2 years. You know, the knowledge is even changing faster than we can even print books. You know, we don't even try to print curriculum anymore because you know, knowledge is changing so quickly, and we do have conversations about what is it, you know, instead of trying to teach a lot of content, like, oh, here's this body of knowledge that we need to now take from my brain and put it into yours. We've started to let go of that and just say, well, let's just try to teach them how to read and think so that, because the information that they're going to need doesn't even exist yet, right? So, but let's teach them how to ingest information, right? How to think critically about it, how to question a source, right? And so all of that's great, but we need to remember that, let's be honest, the education system is created to reinforce the status quo as well. I mean, I don't think a whole lot of people in power are really thinking of the education system as something that they want to create people who maybe the have-nots currently, we really want them to be haves and be empowered enough to take the job away from my child potentially, or, you know, however you want to frame that. But that's a constant sense of tension and conflict that you see in the way schools are funded, right? And the different classes we have, and the different schools that are created, right, that tend to attract certain people or prevent others from being able to attend them by the way, maybe not in name, but, oh, it just happens to be a little too far away unless you have a car, right? Or, you know, some kind of way to even find out that the school exists, which would be you'd have to have internet, right? Or something like that. Or even in my school, it's a public school, but we have honors. We have the honors track classes. So there's a different curriculum for different kids. So, you know, that really just came down to, so what I was coming to just when Christine was talking was like, this is one of the obstacles I see, and it helps me understand the tension I feel sometimes in class. Like, I know what I'm being told to do is like teach them to think, but there's a lot of forces in play that go against that as well. Yeah, and that's my own box, right? And my own cultural bias is in there as well, that I have to constantly be putting myself up against, you know, and trying to learn my way out of.
Right. And again, if we haven't agreed on what we're teaching, we could say, oh, we all think teaching thinking is good. Like, it's kind of hard to argue that. Like, we weren't non-thinkers, although I guess maybe some people do. But then what are you using to teach them to think? You know, like the books that I buy for my child are about, you know, being strong and taking risks and standing up for other people and, you know, caring about people or the planet or climate change or whatever, you know, but we were talking about that even when in public school, like if you're picking a book to teach your kids, like, what are you teaching? You know, so everything is tied to what our beliefs are. And if we haven't agreed to that, how do we create an education system that then, you know, helps our young people to learn those beliefs?
Yeah, you know, this is such a great conversation because things seem so simple until you actually think about them. And I'm very glad that you're talking about it because we have to start recognizing our bias. You know, if you're in some Christian families are not teaching their children to think. Some do, but some don't. They're teaching them to believe.
That's true.
Right?
That was my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and now let's say you didn't grow up in that kind. Well, I mean, you grew up in a Catholic family, but let's say that wasn't even the whole point. We're all being taught to believe what our parents believe, whatever that is. Whether you have a liberal bias or a conservative bias or, you know, a pothead bias. You know, we're all being taught to believe something, and as we say in Living with Reality, beliefs are just beliefs. So really thinking is what we're doing right now. You know, what you're doing is you're breaking out of the mold of belief and at least allowing yourself to think and to be able to feel what it feels like to be on the other side of this argument. You know, what you think the belief should be. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to end up on their side, right? I'm not going to go there. I know if I'm being honest with myself, I am not going to believe that the public schools should be teaching Christianity or Judaism or any religion. I just don't believe in that, right? So I have to be honest about that. But that is a belief. You know, and can I at least be honest that this is a belief and then keep bringing myself back to, well, what is it? Why do we even need to teach our beliefs to our children? What is it that we're doing here? Why do we feel the need to propagate a belief system that may be 50 years old, 100 years old, or 10,000 years old. James?
Yes, I think that there's a way to get at some things that are relatively neutral, like teaching basic life skills, analytical thought, and so on. I'm aware of the Montessori approach too, where the child gets to go to whatever subject area they want to learn, they feel an interest in or curiosity about. So supposing you had a whole bunch of categories where the kids could just learn these skills, learn these things like the math and the science and the whatever, to where you capitalize on what they feel they need at the time and they're ready for at the time, and you have a variety of options available to them to go to and learn. But particularly having the foundations of the basic life skills, including things like the math and so on, to where you don't have to get into the realm of beliefs right away until you see more and more emerging from within the child. Of course, then you're talking also about social skills and children helping each other and learn. And maybe when with the children who progress faster can turn around and help the children who are slower.
See, but that's all based on beliefs, James. You're just not seeing that.
Okay.
Right? I think you're noticing it now, aren't you?
Okay.
It's like, well, we have a belief that children should be taught how to help each other. And so that's the way you should structure it. And even those basic life skills that you're talking about, math, I was talking to Tracy about this yesterday. For those of you who don't know me, I am Granny Rocks and Beth Green. See, I'm Beth Green and Granny Rocks. So it's like, yeah, sure. And what math skills do we need? In my day, you had to remember, you had to do division, multiplication, subtract. Now you do, the skill is calculator. The skill is computer. What are the basic life skills? We were also laughing about cars. Everybody feels like every child needs to learn how to drive, but 10 years from now, maybe they won't know how to drive. They don't need to know how to drive because the cars will be driving. So whether it's, looking at the beliefs that are underneath everything you're saying, like you believe that the child will automatically go to what he needs or she needs. Well, I don't know that that's true. That's a belief. Maybe it is true. Maybe it isn't true. Some children may need more guidance than others. There is no one size fits all.
Now, there is a thought here. Can everybody believe that we should try to go for what's the highest good of all?
No, not everybody believes that, James.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
Especially in the U.S.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
Individualism
it's
is a
my
big
child.
value.
Yeah, I want what's best for my child. I want my child to advance. I want my child to have the opportunities. I don't care about your kid.
My caste is better than your caste. My religion is better than your religion. My country comes first. No, I don't think we have that in agreement. Okay, let's keep going. So I hope that discussion of education at least popped some balloons in people's heads. It's like, whoa, this is not so simple. Who is called next? Okay, Helen.
In my thinking about mental health, what I was saying before is...
And you should say that you are a therapist.
I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in California, and I have been for 32 years.
Can you hear her okay?
Yeah.
Could you face the camera,
No.
Helen?
No, she's looking at us, James.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you want me to face the camera?
Then you'd be facing us.
We can hear you better.
Anyway, the first thought that came to my mind is that, Beth, I'm sure you'll remember this. Maybe 30 years ago, you and I would sit around talking about creating a world where everybody got their needs met, and that we would be putting ourselves out of business and we would start a donut shop. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny, and yet, of course...
Except we wouldn't do sugar. It would have to be something else.
I was just going to say that. Of course, we would never do that. But I think one of the things when I was thinking about the mental health field and how it could change if we had a world that met everybody's needs is that we would be putting ourselves out of business in a way. Our business would look so different. And I was triggered in thinking that again when Christine was talking about it. But of course, it wouldn't be that we were out of business. It would be that we would be training preschool kids or whatever, because when I thought about what do we need, well, we need a sense of safety. We need, and we've talked about it already, about no shame, no blame. We need to feel a value in what we have to offer, that whatever our gift is, even if it's only that we could scrub a toilet, that gift is valued as much as a brain surgeon, that all of our gifts are valued, that we feel like we're valuable human beings and lovable human beings, and that we can relate to other people and that other people want to relate to us. And these very basic things that are what I work on and Beth works on every day, and anyone who's a counselor works on every day, is how do people feel about themselves? How do they feel about their part in the community? And how do they feel in their intimate relationships with other people? And do they even have any? And so, you know, we are doing amelioration work way, way down the road. And it's so ineffective compared to how it might be if we could agree on things like you were saying, James, if we could agree on some basic principles. And it's not just mental, it's social, it's spiritual, and it's emotional. You know, how do we process our feelings? How do we deal with the challenges of life? What do we believe about life and our place in it? You know, these very basic questions. And if we were living in a world where everybody's needs were met, you know, we would start so young in trying to help children relate to each other differently, and with parents being educated about how to help their children relate to each other. And, you know, I know Todd and Christine have raised their children with the Living with Reality Principles, which is a book that Beth wrote and that you can get for free. It's a free download at theinnerrevolution.org, and I would totally recommend it. And of course, it's my belief that that book, if we all lived it, would be a great, great distance toward creating this society that we want. And I know Todd and Christine and Chris, Reese, and Carrie, you know, raised their kids with these beliefs. And yet the society has all these other beliefs, the violence and the competition, and, you know, and so we can't change the mental health of, you know, of individuals or individual families until we change the whole, because no matter what you're teaching in your home, they're going to be bombarded with much more powerful information, you know, in the collective. I don't know if I have anything else to say or not. Oh, well, I do. That my fantasy about what it would look like would be the flattening of the hierarchy. You know, there wouldn't be the psychiatrist at the top with the MD, you know, and then the clinical social worker, because she is also, or he is also in the medical field, you know, and then the LM, the licensed marriage and family therapist, and so on, down, 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 down. You know, it would be flattened out to, you know, what do we need and who can provide it best? And it might be a peer group in their elementary school. You know, it might be another 7-year-old that really is what that person needs to help them process their feelings and feel safe and valuable, or what other principles that we could agree on. And so it would be much more collaborative model where whatever people needed, we offered that without prejudice as to it needs to fit in this box. And there is definitely a box nowadays where mental health care fits, you know, and you have this referral and that referral, and you have to go up the hierarchy and down the hierarchy, and that would all be gone, because that does not meet people's needs. And, you know, we can see it. We can see it in our world that people's mental health, emotional, spiritual needs are not being met.
I love what you're saying, Helen, and I just want to add a few things.
Sure.
One is that, you know, I'm sure you've thought of these things too, that so much violence, emotional, spiritual, and physical, in the home. In the home.
And Lynn and I were talking about this on the way here, you know, and the criminalization of drug addiction, and the, you know, the isolation of people who have an inherited disease like, you know, schizophrenia, or, you know, so yes, the violence in the home and the violence in our communities and the way we treat that violence. Just like you were saying about Anthony Weiner, it's like, you know, let's lock him up. That's the way to fix it. You know, of course, none of that would be there if we really were meeting the needs of the people, because people don't act out unless they're in tremendous emotional pain. They do not act out. And so, you know, the answer to emotional pain is not prison.
Yeah, and just to throw in too that people get stigmatized because they've asked for help.
Yeah.
You know, oh, you're depressed. People get stigmatized for actually acknowledging that they have emotional issues, which is another problem that we're facing. You know, so much is threatened by what you're saying, because, for example, if we started talking about the violence in the home, everybody would have to look at their own behavior. How have I been violent with my spouse or my mate or my child? How has my child been violent with other children, and why?
Including emotionally.
Yeah.
How have I been abusive to myself?
Yeah, and oh my God, yes. How have I been, and why? And, you know, if we look, going back to the first part of this discussion about, you know, the regeneration, you know, we are so abusive to ourselves every day in how we force ourselves to do things that we hate doing, that drain us of our energy and our life force. People, I mean, I did, because I was a radical till my 30s, then I became a spiritual radical. But before that, I was, you know, a social activist and a political activist. You know, I worked in factories, and I know what, you know, I saw it. I lived it. I know what it's like. You know, you're standing there on a hard floor, you know, at a plastics factory where the machine moves and you've got to keep up with it. And I remember injuring myself in the plastics factory when I was trying to pull a mold off a machine, and you can't stop. I mean, you just cannot stop. You have to go to the bathroom from today to next year until somebody comes and relieves you. You cannot leave your station. You can piss in your pants, but you can't leave your station, and nobody would hear you if you screamed. And one of these things, I was pulling this thing off and I started bleeding, and this, you know, I didn't know what to do. The machine goes on, I have to keep up, and I'm bleeding on everything. And finally the floor lady came running over. I mean, you're bleeding on the plastic. Yeah. You know, these are the great jobs that we want back in, you know, in the Make America Great Again, that we should all be able to work in plastics factories again, right? Or go get black lung disease. Here, have black lung disease for your life's destiny. And so there is so much abuse and self-abuse that we have to go through in order to make money. And yet we're constantly being fed the need to make money to buy the next thing that we may or may not need. Some of these things we do need. Some of these things we don't need. Some of these things should be provided in another way. I mean, we are sitting, James and I are now thinking, oh my God, my income is down. We're spending too much. I'm not going to have enough money to save for old age. I'm already 72. He's 73, but we have to start thinking about our old age. You know, and it's like, oh, thank God. I just read yesterday that the average lifespan for a woman in America is, what, 81. 81. I don't have to worry. As long as I can keep going for the next 10 years, I'll be okay, because I'll never have to retire. And then I won't have to worry about the fact that I don't have the money. But see, this is we're so alone with our problems. We're alone with our grief. We're alone with our roiled up anger. You know, every person in their family feeling angry at the parent for abusing them, or feeling, you know, angry at the brother who's hitting them, or trying to get superior, or trying to make their way, or trying to get some attention, or, you know, everybody struggling with all this pain inside. And so what you said, Helen, is so true. We are so far behind the 8 ball by the time we get a client. They're a mess. And we don't know how, we can't change their lives for them. So, you know, how can you change? You can say, oh, to this woman, oh yeah, you should be cool. It's okay your husband is an alcoholic and comes home and beats the kids. I mean, you know, just chill, accept the things you cannot change, you know, chill. Of course, and you say, well, no, leave the bum. Okay, so she leaves that bum, and then she meets a guy who's taking heroin, you know, or, oh, he's not taking heroin, he's a work addict, or he's a sex addict, or he's gambling. or he doesn't listen. You know, you would throw away this one and get another one, but then who's there to get? And what about you? I mean, the amount of suffering that we all feel and that we feel so alone with. See, that comes from a lack of social cohesion. Just like you were saying, Helen. So is this opening people's minds? I mean, we're not just beating a dead horse, right? Are we thinking more?
Yes. Yeah.
Good. Good. Okay.
How could we?
And Joseph, are you volunteering or are you scratching your head?
Can't hear you.
Hang on, let me take them off of you.
I'm just scratching my head.
Okay, there we go. All right, Lizzie, I think you had your hand up that you wanted to share.
Well, just what can we do to get social
cohesion?
Social cohesion.
Well, that's what we're here to talk about. That one of the things that we do to get that social cohesion is for everybody to drop the mask and start talking about their needs. In fact, maybe it's time for a song break. How about a song break? This is the latest video that I've made. Some of you have seen it. It's on Facebook and on my YouTube channel, that it was inspired by what's going on with the NFL. And it looks like it's all wrapped up. You know, all the football players should go back and just get back. The children should be seen but not heard. But what it was inspired by my desire to support the men who were trying to speak up. But what it really ended up being was about how all men are suffering. And one of the ways that we can develop social cohesion is by getting honest about what we are actually experiencing. So let me get this on the screen, and then I have to set up the screen so that the voice that this is you okay. See that little hummingbird? No, that's not what I want you to do. Just a minute.
And remember about the other audio thing, and then to turn that off when it's done.
Turn on original sound. I got that all planned. And then I have to remember what I did last time wrong. I figured out what I did wrong last time. Exits full screen. Here we go. I'm turning this way down. Then I'm going to share the screen. And then we're going to pray that this is actually going to work. Now I'm going to turn it on. And it's called Peel the Mask, in support of our gladiators and all men. And because I was dealing with a broken arm, I couldn't actually compose any more music on the keyboard, so I used an instrumental song that I've used before called They're All Hurting, but it couldn't have been more appropriate. So give me a thumbs up if this is good. Peel the mask from the white man, and you see an insecure boy whose father tells him to be tough and fight to maintain an America that never was. Peel the mask from the black man, and you see a frightened boy whose father tells him to look tough to keep away the white man who can blow him away and no one would care. Peel away the mask from the Muslim man, and you see an oppressed boy whose father tells him he is tough and can rule once again. Peel away, peel away. Peel away the mask of any man, and you see a boy full of hope and fear, clinging to his right to rule over women and kids when all else fails. Peel away. Peel away and see an alone man who fights his brothers because he buys the lies
and isn't tough enough to admit that that's what he's doing. Oh, gladiators, you are to be seen but not heard. Spill your health and brains for our entertainment and trade them for the big bucks and glitter that will surely fade. We like our black men mean to one another, but meek with us. White men too. Peel away the mask of any man, and you see a boy full of hope and fear. Peel away and see an alone man who fights his brothers because he buys the lies and isn't tough enough to admit that that's what he's doing.
How was the sound? Did it work?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I mean, like it really worked.
It was excellent.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. This has been a struggle, and we're gonna, at some point I'm gonna do one with singing and see if that works, but this is hopeful because that means we can be broadcasting from here and people won't have to have CDs or anything.
It's noon. I know we started late, but just want to let people know.
I was just going to ask about that. We started late. I don't feel finished. Can people stay for another 15 minutes or so that we can get more done and more people can share? I know that those of us in the Inner Rev are staying till 1 anyway, because we have to meet afterwards to finish our Inner Revolutionary training. But for the rest of you, we invite you to stay with us. And let's try to finish this out. So how that song was, excuse me?
It's an IRT, so we actually weren't planning to stay till.
I can't hear, whoever is speaking, we can't hear you.
Come here. I don't know what you're saying. I couldn't.
That is not IRT. We're not
Oh, it's next set.
Yeah.
What's that?
We don't have, this isn't IRT. We actually have IRT next week. So,
oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not till 1 o'clock. So we're definitely here till 12:15, but no one's planning to stay till 1. So just bringing that forward. So we just need to agree to be here till 1 if we're going to do that, or go somewhere else till 1.
I still can't hear you, Ross.
Can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It's just not IRT. Just bringing that forward. So we're not here till 1 o'clock.
Oh, I see. I thought it was just assumed that whenever we did something like this, we would add some time so that people are getting all the training that they would have gotten before. But so anyway, I hope that people stay, till whatever we need to complete, and that our people will stay a few minutes afterwards to talk about our next step.
Yeah.
So thank you. Okay, so that song, I think, is an approach to getting beyond opinions. Now, I know that when I put it up there, it was not popular, but we got likes on Facebook on that song from men. And then other men were totally appalled. And I mean, but the responses were, said nothing. There was no content to the response. But that's what I mean, whether that you like that song or don't like that song is about our collective pain. That is oneness right there. We may not agree on how to solve the problems, but if we can begin to hear the pain that each other is expressing, then we begin to feel the oneness, because everybody feels the same pain. That's all my experience, like Helen, I've been counseling for years, 37 years. you know, not just in doing workshops, you know, talks, but also doing counseling. It's all the same pain. I feel alone. I feel scared. I feel unloved. I feel insecure. I feel like I have to prove something about myself. You know, I'm going to lose something I have, or I'm never going to get what I think I need. People use me. They exploit me. They don't listen to me. They don't care about me. You know, I don't care. Scratch the surface of any human being, and in our society, and I know across the globe, whether they admit it or not, there it is. And all the crazy things that we do in order to deal with that pain. So who would like to share next?
Lindy.
Hi, I'm a nurse manager for a very large healthcare provider and insurance company. And
Hang on a second. I just need to mute someone. All right, go ahead.
We lost her video.
That's all right.
I know.
No,
Okay.
it's not.
Go ahead, keep talking.
okay, and they, you know, our motto basically is preventative health. You know, we do lots of cancer testing, and the doctors tell everybody to exercise and to eat right, and it's very universal. But as Beth was saying earlier, what we need is not health care, we need health. And our society is not organized to provide that. We don't think about the workers, and if we're overworking them, we don't teach the children young about what health is and how to get it and how to eat right and what exercise provides for you. And when people do get sick, we don't provide them with all of the choices that are available. You know, Western medicine is very sick-oriented and wants to give you the least amount of care possible to bring you back to whatever level they think is acceptable. We're not offered alternative methods unless we want to pay for them out of our own pocket, most of the time. And something that, you know, some change that I would envision would be to have, you know, a meeting with families and an alternative provider and, you know, just people from different disciplines to come together to find out what really is the best care for you. Maybe the best care if you have cancer is to not have any treatment and to be able to feel good as you can and to let nature take its course. Maybe the best treatment for somebody who is in pain is massage, and it should be paid for by the insurance company. Maybe they've tried everything and the best alternative is for them to take narcotics. So we don't provide all of that. We have the doctor at the top of the hierarchy, and we have all the people underneath them, and you know, they are dictating what kind of care we have. So to me, envisioning a world where we're much more cooperative, much more co-creative, we teach people how to take care of themselves. We have people who teach them how to take care of themselves, and we offer a lot more ways for people to take care of themselves. And of course, start again very, very early, teaching children how to take care of themselves, what makes them healthy, what doesn't. And so we have less of the, you know, sick care and more of health care.
That's a wonderful statement, Lynn. I really appreciate it. And I, you know, the only thought that I have is that to add to that at this time, because we're just giving some general thoughts on all of this at this moment, is that for when we teach children how to take care of themselves, the so many of us go into that is, well, what you need to do to take care of yourself is to make sure that you can get ahead. You know, the best way to take care of yourself is to be competitive and win on the, you know, on the sports field. The best way to take care of yourself is to make sure that you can make enough money. You know, and that, you know, to even ask the question, what does it mean to take care of ourselves? You know, and that's, we're not even there. You know, it's all so skewed. So I totally love what you're sharing. And I just wanted to add that additional thought of what does it mean for human beings to take care of ourselves? Why do we have a paradigm, for example, that we work 12 months out of the year, we get 2 weeks off vacation, that we work 5, 6, 7 days a week, really? You know, and then we have all that, and that we are, maybe we have 8 or 10 days, 10 hours on the job, but then we have to come home and cook and clean and do our own laundry. And, you know, most of us have to do that. I mean, that all of that work is what we are it's like Anne was saying before about the educational system. You know, we are training people to live that life and think that that's normal. Yep. Rather than saying taking care of ourselves means what kind of things do we actually need and how can we get them and distribute them, and how can we have enough time and care for ourselves, and who can take care of us when we can't. Chris.
Thank you.
Is this your share now on your part?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I just wanted to add one to that too.
Okay, well, do you think you should, are you going to go on to your part, Chris? Or are you just making a comment here?
I was going to go on to my part, but whatever's right.
Okay, hold on one second. Let Helen comment on Lynn, and then I'd love for you to come up next.
Yeah,
okay.
I just wanted to say one thing, that when we're thinking about health, we need to think about spiritual, emotional, as well as physical and social.
Yeah. Right on.
Chris, yes. Is your audio not working on your device? Because we couldn't see you when you talked because you were your audio was on the.
What? I see her.
I don't. I see your phone. It's 213-361-2664. Is that your phone, Chris?
Yeah, he's saying that when I talk that it.
Oh, I see. The big picture.
Is the best.
Yeah.
This is the best I can do.
Okay.
I can see a little image.
So I think when we're looking at the common language and we have this, we've been talking about the obvious, right? That we don't share values. I think that there is a baseline need to survive. So that is a baseline. That's a place where we all can start, is the need to survive. And when we start there, right, then if we can connect to the need to feel our connection to one another as humans, that's the next piece. And then we can start to try to move away from the opinions and the religion or the cultural views that have grown up over time. And I've thought about this a lot in the context of my own field, which is insurance, and then I've thought about it in the broader sense of the field of financial services. And, all we need is some way to know that if something disastrous happens or that we didn't plan for, that we're not going to get wiped out.
Yeah.
And there certainly are ways to create insurance models that are not driven by profit, whether it's health insurance or auto insurance or commercial insurance. And there's a lot of levels to it. It ties into our legal system, which I'm not going to speak to. Because when I bring it all back down to the core thing, we need to survive. We need, most of us, if we can still feel our authentic self, we need to feel like we're connected to other human beings, and we want to contribute whatever we can. We don't want to feel like we're being compared to others. We want to make our own contribution. And in that space, I feel like there's the potential for us to have a conversation that doesn't alienate others. I'm being very brief because of the time. Obviously, I could talk a lot longer.
It feels like there's one more thing that you need to share.
Well, is it about that survival is way more than just, physically getting by.
Well, you're really talking about regeneration.
Yeah.
You're really talking about regeneration. But actually, you know what just was coming through my head that I think maybe is you, that I'm picking up your thought. I'm not sure. It's, I am a senior executive in the insurance industry, not like your property insurance it's not like your car insurance or not your home insurance, but it's still in the insurance industry. And the people that I work with are not bad people.
Oh no, I think I work with some fantastic human beings.
Right. And they're caught up in a system.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure the same is true for Kaiser and I'm sure that the same is true for most industries, right? I mean, unless you're selling pornography or, you're doing something that's illegal, or you're selling a product that is likely to harm others, there's a lot of really good people out there that have just bought into the concept. And this is what we know, sort of like when Anne was describing education. I mean, it's no surprise, right? There's a regimen and,
See, and I think that's important. So that is something you were feeling. I didn't just imposing that thought on you. Okay, good. Because I think that's really important. That because I think we're probably, except Todd has something to share on artificial intelligence, and I think we've gone through all the people who said they wanted to share for this time. That that the world. I mean, you're a senior executive also. We have had people here, a teacher. So many of the people who've shared today are actually executives, and you can't be the only ones. Now, it is true that you've all been through the stream and the org, and you've been my students or clients or whatever, and so I've kind of brainwashed you over the years, but but it was in you. It wasn't really ever brainwashing, was it? It was something that was in you. I mean, you become a nurse like because you care. Something in you draws you to a certain field, and who knows what has drawn people to different fields. But whether you're a senior executive or you're on the assembly line or you're the clerk, and I've been in the typing pool, and I see the inefficiency of the way we organize even our corporations, not to speak of the industries, not to speak of our society, but that there are people everywhere who are hurting because your job is so stressful and the other people that you work with are so stressed and they know there's only one thing that they have to be thinking about, which is the bottom line. And if they want to choose their own health and well-being, they may not succeed and they may have to quit, or they'll lose their jobs, or they'll be replaced, or whatever. So what I'm saying is the stress goes up and down the line. The stress of making money.
Yeah, I work with some people who are very, very wealthy, and they've had plenty of success that if they were objective, they could look at themselves and they go, you know what, I can really feel pretty good that I've been able to hit the next level. And they're so driven, and it's, you see it in their physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health all the time. It's very sad. I was with someone who I consider rich, and he was talking about someone who's a lot richer, who told him that he was going to make a lot of money on a deal, and he was just going to, this is a quote, go out and buy shit he didn't need. And the rich guy that I'm talking to was laughing, like he thought this was hilarious. And I sat there thinking, this is I don't even know what to do. Like, I can't even take this in, I can't take this in.
Yeah. Aren't you rich enough? So this, again, coming back to the joint suffering, as well as, which is that we are not regenerating spiritually, emotionally, as Helen said, and we're really so out of balance. So now, thank you for that, Chris. Todd, would you like to share your piece on artificial intelligence, and then we can talk a little bit about where we go from here?
Sure. All right. Okay. So, as I think about the needs, of society is, the need to be connected and the need to grow and learn and expand our capabilities and become more wise as we evolve. There's a lot that I've read, and there's obviously it's a huge breadth of things that I could talk about, but there's a couple things that I want to talk about. Like as far as what's possible is, people may know that the artificial intelligence developed by IBM called Big Blue, which is now Watson, beat Garry Kasparov, who was the #1 chess player in the world. And what they thought would happen at that point was that chess would be over. Like people would no longer want to do chess. And the same thing happened with Go. Go is the ancient Chinese game that is supposedly the most complex game, and DeepMind, Google's AI, just beat the top Go player in the world last year, or was it earlier this year? Anyway, it was recently. And the two things that really stick out of my mind that I've heard about this are there are more grandmasters in chess than there were ever before. And so it's the combined wisdom of the artificial intelligence combined with human intelligence. And it's just expanded the desire for people to go into that. And same with what are you doing, Helen?
Well, it's got a phone.
I know, but they're not seeing the phone. They're seeing me.
Yeah, we're seeing you.
Yeah. So, so what I'm saying, and this is what in this recent book that I've read is one of the possibilities, is the multiple kinds of intelligence that can be developed. A human being has a particular kind of intelligence and a particular kind of perspective and an ability to look out. And that's why, artificial intelligence, they're now wanting to run cars because, hopefully artificial intelligence won't get distracted about, worrying about some argument they have with their spouse, or, it's like, so let's, instead of being fearful of artificial intelligence, the possibility is that we see how we can co-create together with it and use the particular advantages that it gives us, and we still have, an important part in that co-creative process. So that was one thing I wanted to share. And the other is just what's happening in the realm of technology with what I'll call collaborative and open source. Wikipedia, people thought was impossible, that people would come together and create a knowledge bank that is unlike anything that the world has ever seen. There are issues, but they're working out, and the same with WordPress, which powers the top, 27% of the top 10 million websites on the internet. It's completely developed by volunteers, and I mean, there is a for-profit company that makes, an income, but the core coders that do the work of WordPress, they do it all volunteer, and all those plugins, So it's pretty remarkable, and it's what this author is saying, Kevin Kelly, is saying it's changing the internet, and the introduction of the internet is changing us, and because of certain inherent aspects of it. It wants to be free. It wants to be spread. So it's actually changing the way we are. And he envisions a very bright future. I mean, there'll obviously be downsides like we're seeing already when people use it in nefarious ways, but he sees the potential upside being like the Enlightenment, like a long period of human history where that people look back on this era and go, that was the beginning. So those are a couple of the possibilities.
I love that. And the other thing which you didn't mention, Todd, but I know you're aware of, is the possibility of artificial intelligence freeing our time.
Yes.
You know,
us from doing work that is degrading, like working in a mine, or like those are all things that robots and artificial intelligence could do much better than we can. Routine tasks where we injure our arms because we're typing, or yes, repetitive
stress injury.
Yeah.
But it's what you're saying is so true. And going back to the conversation about education, if parents were working 4 hours a day, they might be more engaged with their kids. They might be able to even go to the school. You know, we were saying about should parents go to school with their kids?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's a stupid idea, but I mean, they'd be able to, not just to watch the kids, but so education could be ongoing for the rest of your life. You know, it's all of this is possible in a society, in a world where we have the technology to free our time. But if the purpose of the economy is profit, you can't do that.
Right. And endless growth, you know?
That's right. If your focus is on making money, you can't look at workers and say, 2 hours a day is more than enough for people to be doing this, because that's all we really need in order to produce that. But no, but we have to be sold things we don't need, things that, you know, that are planned obsolescence, right?
Yes.
You know, and that we're all locked in. We don't think. And one of the major things that keeping us working or being afraid to lose our jobs does, it stops us from having the time to think about these things.
Yep.
We're not supposed to think outside the box. We're supposed to accept the status quo, that just because the world is organized like this, it has to be. You know, that would be like a lord in feudal times saying, hey, there's always going to be knights and lords and earls and dukes. You know, because there's nothing else. And then, of course, serfs and so on. I mean, and if so, we're stuck in a paradigm. We don't think outside of it, and that's normal for people. And we have a position in those structured societies that give us a sense of safety. It isn't safety that gives us safety. It is having a position in an unsafe system that gives us the illusion that we're safe, because we have a place. We have a place in the family. We have a place at the, you know, in the industry, even if the industry itself is unsafe, but I have a place in it. I may be a woman who is, you know, waxing my arms because I'm afraid that my executive husband is going to go after his secretary. And so she thinks her safety comes from keeping her husband, rather than her safety comes from taking care of her body, mind, and spirit and having a life of her own. Today, I think we've begun to crack the egg. I hope. People from many different fields talking about the same thing, recognizing the same pain and the same problems going through their industry, our society, our world. And we weren't even speaking about our personal pain today. I'm sure we could go on for 6 weeks talking about our personal pain. If we were just, and it's beautiful what Tracy said, you know, she was in a prison cell, and which you talked about as the box, and then you take the box away and she's still like this, doesn't even know that she can move her arm, can't recognize that the prison gate is open. And why is the prison gate open? Because we are the schnooks who are keeping ourselves in prison. This world cannot work on owners and shareholders alone. If there were no truck drivers, if there were no nurses, if there were no students, if there were no teachers, if there were no factory workers, if there were no clerical workers, if there were no computer programmers, there would be no society. You know, the way to stop a war is to have every soldier put down his arms or her arms and walk away, and the war is over. But we haven't taken the power to change the world because we don't even think we have it, because we've been trained to be powerless, to feel powerless, and never question. And the biggest threat of artificial intelligence is to give us time and freedom to question. And that we have to change the foundation of society for it to work, because if the machines produce the products and the workers don't get the money, there's nobody to buy them. And so the idea that we have connected work and money, I'm back to that. Work and money, housework, no money, no value. Work, money, value. Yeah, but supposing we get to the point that we don't need people to do all of these things, where will the money come from? Which is what we understand is the way to organize society. Oh, she or he who has the most money gets the best, the most goods, the best health care, even if it isn't. You know what I mean? Everything is divided along the financial lines. Well, what are we going to do if we don't have a hierarchy where I make more money than you? How are we going to divide things? I feel the fear myself. I love my home. I don't want somebody to come over and say, excuse me, you've lived there long enough, I'm moving in. I can cop to that. I have a fear that somebody's going to take away something that I said, well, I'm paying for it, so I get to have it, right? This is threatening. This is really threatening. You want to get ahead? Get money. If money isn't the way, then what is? How do we divide up our resources? When do we ever question? I think you brought this up, what is for the highest good of all? We don't ask that question. What is for the highest good of all, including me? Would it be better for me to have this house or for you to have this house? There is the spiritual crisis that's under everything. I do really want to thank Helen for bringing up the book, Living with Reality. That book really talks about how to shift consciousness. And it's step by step, and it's not airy-fairy, and it's long, but it's there. I mean, this is how we can shift consciousness, and people have studied it and used it. It's the foundation of our organization. And we have another free book called The Handbook for the Inner Revolution that really is 100 pages. The other one is 688 pages. That's how you shift consciousness. But this one is only 100, and that's also free. And it's on the innerrevolution.org website. Thinking, questioning is subversive. Loving oneself, not one's ego, not the ego nonsense. Loving one's inner self is subversive. Loving one another is subversive. What would we like to do at our next meeting, which is organized for October 28th? What do you think we're ready for?
More of the same.
You want more of the same. Deepening some of the thoughts. What have people been thinking about and realizing since our meeting?
Yeah.
How, like that, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going deeper.
Going deeper, and have you spread this conversation? And how have people responded to that? And what have you realized? So if nobody but us shows up next time, so what? Because we'll be back to talk about what we've realized, and keep inviting people and use all the tools we have. So does that sound like it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to have, would anyone like to share anything before we close?
Hi. Thanks
Hi.
Hi.
Would you like to share something?
I was just wanting to say thanks for letting me listen in. It was really amazing to hear.
Wow.
Awesome.
Hearing about all these things that you're thinking of is amazing.
Join us. Join us, please. We need young people. It doesn't mean, we're not asking you to give us all your money. We're not asking you, we just want you to join us in spirit and get in touch with Lizzie and Luann, who just come to Eugene. Yeah. And, let's talk about maybe how you can bring more people to hear this kind of thing. Don't you think we need to spread this thinking?
Yes, I do. See, I have not much to give. I can only give my thoughts. Being in this time and being what's called the future. That's all.
And you call that not much to give? Honey, you are the future. You are the future. Like some of us are almost on the ready to croak. you know, we want to share, you know, I desperately want to reach young people. If you know a group of people, I'm willing to come by internet, or if it's to Eugene, I can physically come. I'm a very sick lady. You know, I'm willing to come to Eugene or the area there, Lizzie and Luann there. I'm ready to speak. I'm ready to talk on the internet. I want to do something in the years I have left. I care. I care.
That's all we do stuff. We're all about action here.
Yes. So please, any energy or thoughts or love that you have to offer, or you can bring this to your friends. There's going to be a video of this, or you can bring your friends to us. Please don't ever put down what you are.
I go to school at a.k.a. middle school. There we're
Arts and
technology academy, trying STEM school, meaning math and science. Oh, she wants to talk.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right, Lizzie and Luann, you talk to these ladies afterwards and see what we can cook up. Thank you so much for sharing that. You made our day.
Thanks. You made mine.
Wonderful.
Lovely.
Wonderful.
Okay, I saw Amy coming up to the microphone as well after. Amy?
I know I tend to look at that I don't have a lot to offer. And I realized that I need to talk to Lynn. Because one of the reasons I left medicine was patients are seen every 15 minutes. And all you can do with that is give medication. And I didn't look at the world that way. I don't look at the world that way. But we have to, the whole thing would have to be let go of it to have, that I need to see as many patients as possible to pay for the medical system as it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else want to share something?
Irene has her hand raised.
Okay.
I know at the other end of the spectrum, from your Anderson sharing, what this experience has been is shifted me from thinking of it as a wonderful fantasy to the beginnings of the shift that hopefully we can get the 100 monkeys together and make the difference.
That is a wonderful, wonderful statement you just made. If we think of this as a wonderful fantasy, then that's what we're going to be communicating to others. This is a necessity.
Yeah.
We can't go on like this. We're leaving a trashed earth to our children, and we're leaving trashed people. And trashed people create trashed people, because distressed and traumatized people create that environment in their homes. This is not a fantasy. This is a necessity. So I'm very glad you said that. Okay. I think you already did Bathe and Joy. But it feels like we should do Bathe and Joy again, doesn't it?
Yeah, let's all do.
Oh, did Annie want to speak? I'm looking for a file, so I missed that. Okay.
No, I wasn't going to do that, although I could. Granny, it was just making me remember that I replied to comments on our Facebook page, and one person asked for step-by-step solutions. He said that there are a zillion solutions, what are yours? Because nothing ever happens. And what I wrote was, it's not about the solutions, it's about the way we think.
Yeah.
That's what this whole, everything you do is about that.
Yeah.
Without changing that, we don't interact with the world any differently.
And we have a step-by-step solution in Living with Reality, which is about changing the way we think.
That's true. That's true. He wanted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's not what you write.
Okay. So I am going to turn on Bathe and Joy, and because it feels like we do need to end with that upbeat. And I'm going to turn on original sound. I've got a lot of things I have to do to make this work, and it worked before. And this is going to be with a voice. So now this will be a real test. Okay, once I get that. Okay. Take your fighting elsewhere. I've got a song to sing. Take your fighting elsewhere. I've got a song to sing. Take your fighting elsewhere. I've got a song to sing. I've got a song. I've got a song to sing. God and the devil, it's time for peace. God and the devil, it's time for peace. God and the devil, it's time for peace. It's time for peace. Let's look into the mirror, let us see ourselves. Let's look into the mirror, let us see ourselves. Let's look into the mirror, let us see ourselves. Let us see ourselves. Good and bad together, let us love ourselves. Good and bad together, let us love ourselves. Oh, good and bad together, let us love ourselves. Let us love ourselves. We're going to the river, we're gonna bathe in joy. We're going to the river, we're gonna bathe in joy. We're going to the river, we're gonna bathe in joy. We're gonna bathe in joy. Going to the river, gonna bathe in joy. We're going to the river, gonna bathe in joy. We're going to the river, gonna bathe in joy. We're gonna bathe in joy. We're going to the river, gonna bathe in joy. We're going to the river, gonna bathe in joy. We're going to the river, gonna bathe in joy. We're gonna bathe in joy. We're gonna bathe in joy. Now, if you like that song, it's on a CD called, oh, wait a minute, I have to fix the sound. Just a minute. Yeah, this is on a CD called Rumblings of Revolution that we are giving away for free. You notice we do a lot of free things. So if you hook up with Lizzie, she'll give you some CDs of Rumblings of Revolution, and also the Gift of Peace CD, which the piece was from, is we also give away. And that's Granny Rocks is my music name. And we're doing it because what else should we be doing? Right?
Right.
Thank you all so much. October 28th and beyond.
Yes, next time.
Let's never give up.
Yes.
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 Yes.